Good evening, everybody. For those of you in the room here in Sydney, and for those of you online, welcome to the first of our new series of technical seminars from the Nautical Institute of British Columbia. We're really excited to start the new series off this year with our first speaker of the season, Elizabeth Dent from Marine Learning Systems. We've known Elizabeth for a few years now. We've seen her keenness and her eagerness to participate in training at sea and for mariners to do their best. We're really excited to welcome Elizabeth here tonight. I'll turn the table over to you.
Thank you so much, Duke, for that warm welcome. I am here to talk about training, and I am from a training company. We are called Marine Learning Systems, as we had talked about, but what are we about? Well, we're actually a technology company. We are not master mariners, although we do have one in the room from our company. But basically we work with a lot of cruise lines. We work with the Canadian Coast Guard. We work with, not the Canadian Coast Guard, that's a typo. And the Royal Canadian Navy. We work with ferry companies, including BC Ferries and tug operators and shipping operators. Our motto is train, track, and improve. And where did we come from? In 2006, there was a sinking. Unfortunately, BC Ferries had this sinking of the Queen of the North. Our CEO and founder was brought on to look at, he was a subject matter expert in e-learning, and he was brought on as a consultant to look at what had happened, because it was determined that most of what had happened there was human error. In many other vocations and areas that are not the marine industry, it is widely accepted that using an LMS or learning management system, you may know that as computer-based training, you may know that as blended learning, but that method of training is actually proven to be very effective. So he started looking for an LMS that would work with the marine industry, realized, okay, there's really good reasons why that method of training isn't here, why it's not being delivered here. And that's a lot to do with the operational context of the marine industry. So he decided to build one for BC Ferries. There was a proof of concept. That is how our company got started. He started getting phone calls, and that's sort of how we came to be. So we look at what the challenges are for crew competency, or what is this context? What, if we're looking at a normal LMS in an academic setting where he was able to start his company, that he originally sort of started and sold, that's an academic context. There's information, you learn it, you do a test, that's it. But that's not how the marine industry works. We've got crew that they're doers. I find that a lot of people in this this vocation, or this in the marine industry, are not people who want to sit at a desk and study or learn stuff. And I mean, not that that's everybody, but it's a very hands-on industry that requires physical and decision-making, strategic kind of information. There's also the idea of foundational knowledge versus skills. So to grow on what I was saying, it's one thing to know you have to do the procedure like this. It's another thing to know why. And so to take that sort of separated out, a computer-based foundational knowledge it can really add to the performance of a skill, basically. We've got changing regulations, rules, and procedures in this industry as well. We all remember a year called 2020. That was a game changer, especially for this industry. And I had a few clients that were really on the front lines of that. And we watched a lot of clients. It was very emergent. What had to happen, what had to be communicated, and what crews had to learn. We also have the idea of standardization. So when our COO and founder got brought on to BC Ferries, one of the things they were looking at is, how do you standardize when you've got a job shadowing kind of procedure? And, you've got one person who might be in a bad mood teaching a new hire versus somebody who is really, really meticulous. They're not on the same level, the new hire, and what they've learned that day. So how do you standardize that? And then we've got the idea of competency first versus compliance. So are we trying to make sure that our seafarers know the job and know what to do? Or are we trying to tick a box and make sure that we followed the guidelines? And so those are kind of the questions that we kind of grappled with, I guess, when we started our company. And it's kind of those challenges that we were trying to address. So again, we have these principles of learner-centric training, and that is what our company is about. And whether or not you're kind of looking at training from our products or you're just looking at it in your own world, these principles apply. So there's the how of learning. Blended learning is what we evangelize here at our company. It's where you're looking at is obviously you can't learn your job just on a computer. That would be insane. Otherwise, every millennial would be doing this job. So it's the idea that there's all kinds of different ways that you can learn that foundational knowledge. And if you're tuning that to the learner, because also who learns at the same rate? There's all kinds of things you need to know. And again, going back to that why that I was speaking of, the foundational knowledge of why things are the way they are and what they need to be. So that when you go to your expert and learn on vessel exactly how to do something, you've got, first of all, a crew that's on a baseline and they all know the same stuff. And then secondly, you're actually teaching them from that place, and they're learning from their expert the things they really need to be learning, rather than these details that really they should know going on. Then there's retention. So as I was saying, crew members learn at different rates. What happens if it takes you longer to understand something? Well, the principles behind an LMS or this kind of platform, it allows you to take the time you need to actually learn. And then basically what I'm saying, blended is best. We believe that if you get that foundational knowledge, you go forward and you can obviously learn a lot better decision making on the fly if you understand the whys of what you're doing. So, say you have never used digital tools in your organization and you're not sure how you would do that. You typically already have all this content. You're actually already delivering it. You have courses, you have PowerPoints, you have lectures, you have checklists. And something like an LMS, a digitized tool, will become a library for these materials. And we have also it's a product that Dave can actually show you probably if it's interesting to you, that is a library for your forms and your checkoffs, or your drills, let's say. We noticed in the marine industry that a lot of people are still using paper. And then they're taking the paper, and I don't know where that's going. If it does go somewhere, it seems like it goes to somebody who does data entry into a spreadsheet, and then I don't know where that goes. But I did actually talk to somebody in the US that showed me all of their papers, or first of all, he said they fill out a paper. Then he told me, I asked them where they went, and he said, I don't know. Then he phoned 3 people, found out where they go, and they go to HR, and I asked him what they did with the papers, and he didn't know. And no one knew. So again, we've got this like data, but where's it going and what is it doing? So just the idea that you can have all that information and use it, and digitized tools will help you do that. And the whole goal is continuous improvement. The whole goal is better training. Everyone wants to get crew moving up the ladder faster. There's a way to do that. And that another part of our tenet at Marine Learning Systems is involving the employees in the safety culture. If they're learning and they've got access to this, they can point out where the learning program isn't working. They can let you know. In some of our, with some of our operators, they use actual video footage of their own employees doing things correctly. And so they start to see their own people showing the culture. And it becomes cultural in these kinds of things as well, where you see someone you know doing something correctly, or you are able to point out, hey, that wasn't something we learned, and I don't understand it. And there's a responsiveness. It really creates a culture of, hey, we really do care about safety. We really do care that you understand. And yeah, so you can, I think I said this, like, you can use PowerPoints, PDFs. A lot of people, when they get started with digital tools, they think they have to sort of have everything ready, a huge library, a huge, vast amount of content. And the point we always try to make is that you already have it, and also you're not going to change over everything right away. You're going to start very simply. You're going to start with one course or one idea, or maybe with one group, and you're going to test it out, and it's going to grow from there, and it's going to make sense because you're doing it in your organization. So I'm just sort of trying to make the point here, instead of kind of getting into our products, that digitized tools can really help this industry train seafarers. A lot of what we do, or these tools do, is the administration that none of you want to do. So I hear nothing but complaints about how many forms and papers and checkoffs that have to be done, and yet our system does all those things and timestamps them and says how long somebody spent doing something, because computers are really good at that. And probably better at than people. So one of them is just the certificates, and keeping track of certificates and making sure you don't go out of compliance. Why should a person be sitting there searching down a spreadsheet when a computer can keep track of that really well, send the email out for you 2 months in advance, and also send the link to where they need to go to get that certification? It's just super easy. And just the idea that a digital tool can actually, like, we're an IT company. You need a process. Oh, it needs to go over to this person first and get signed off there, and then go over to shoreside. And I mean, computers are good at that too. It's just a really easy way to get a lot of processes happening that are very clunky, and seafarers have enough to worry about that is really important. We want them focused on that, and especially those of you in senior roles, you shouldn't be doing data entry, basically. So this is kind of an example of how this streamlined training management, it's a new hire training idea, and how a digital tool can be integrated. And I'm going to try this like pen pointer thing here. So the reason I'm pointing this out is because post-COVID, I know that, and not just post-COVID, actually the industry kind of was going this way, that it was going to be all your senior mariners were about to retire. We knew this, but it really kind of hit hard, I think, after COVID, and now everyone's scrambling to get crew. this can help you. Again, the computers can help you. You get a new hire, and maybe they need certified training. And I don't want to read off the slide too much, except for that this is probably quite interesting. The LMS automatically registers you. Then the crew member completes the courses. Assessments and courses are tracked. This goes to whoever it needs to go to. This new hire is ready to go. Then they, this is right in front of me, so just, oh, it's right in front of you too. We'll go here. The crew member then gets all, so yeah, I think at this point they get hired. Then the crew member now can get their learning materials and training history in the vessel to refresh their memory. The course administrator requires a new course. So now, they're moving up. There's a new course. They can find it on their learning materials. And they're now, and this is when they're on the vessel, because another thing we're going to cover is that our particular LMS works on no connectivity, but basically, the crew member completes this course while they're on board the vessel. Their learning results now are sent to shoreside. No one's filling in a paper and putting it in a binder, and there's not binders full of papers kind of idea. Anyway. So as I mentioned, one of the things that we realized about training in the marine industry is a lot of that training happens when we're nowhere near a connectivity. So we created what we call a remote training server that lives on board. It's like a sort of local area network. The mariners can access that on their phones, on their tablets, and we can train. They get their courses. Sometimes you're out at sea for months and months, and maybe your certification is going to run out, or maybe you have the opportunity to move up into a new role, but you need a certain course or something like that, and that can all happen without you having to come back. So this is details about how I've got clients that have Starlink, but they're still using the remote training server because it doesn't eat up their data. It's very clean and it syncs up in a predictable way, the way they want it, and the IT companies are the ones making that decision. So just to say that this feature has not gone away for us as a company, and it's definitely possible and easy to do because we architected the system that way. And just to say that the amount of data that you can get there as well is phenomenal. These and just the idea that it's an LMS, so we're thinking, we're delivering courses, but that's not all you kind of do with your training. You do a lot of checkoffs, checklists, and there's employee manuals. There's safety bulletins. There's all kinds of things. Where do they all live? Where do you have your HR stuff? Where do you all of that? So these kinds of solutions can house this for you. And if the seafarer can have access to it on their phones or on their remote training server, and I mean, even to the point of, we were talking about OEMs, I think earlier, for different manufacturers, if they need that kind of content, where is this or that, then that can all live there too. So it's really about giving the seafarer access to knowledge and things that are important to do their job, and also the training, obviously. But it's not just limited to training. There's so many things that can live on these things, and once they start getting used, some of our older clients, they use it for so much, and even even to find out where they need to get their third-party training. And as far as to say also courses and things that are available to them for them to move up in the company as well. So if they want, there's a professional development side of this that they can take advantage of. So it's really quite powerful if used in. You have this new tool that we're pretty proud of. It is a skill assessment tool. So it's all great. There's the learning foundational knowledge stuff, but what about actually watching a drill? How do you get data from that? Well, guess what? You can now. And we worked with we had, this all started, we work with a major cruise ship line that has a major training sim center in the Netherlands. And they wanted something to look at their sim training. And Dave, you can jump more specific.
Yeah, they had spent, you guys all know C-Smart? They had spent, I think they spent over $100 million, and then at some point they were standing there with their paper checklist, well, what the hell are we doing with paper?
Yeah.
So they approached us because we were already heavily involved with Carnival, and we worked with those assessors and with the German human factors company to come up with this. So it's much deeper than just an electronic checklist. There's weighting and tagging, and there's an algorithm you can look at, pull up sort of leadership identifiers in there. You can do the debriefing. You get a really nice debriefing report, because we also didn't, and they also didn't want to take away from that mentoring piece, which is critical, right? Nobody's trying to replace the mentorship, but to make it easier for them to assess while they were watching the guys, and then to have this powerful data in the background that Carnival's now using, among other things, to limit overtraining and limit the amount of flights they're using when they can see very clearly that someone's got the skills that they need to see.
Did you all hear that online? I'm not sure if they did, but this is the kind of data that, so we have the layer of data, and then you can put it into a kind of thing, right? You can sort of know who's doing really well, who's killing it, or who maybe certain areas that the entire team is actually lagging behind, or this particular cohort is doing compared to other cohorts. There's all kinds of different trips and how those go. It just really depends. And like for us, because we're a technology company, it's not that we don't care, but we don't care what kind of data you need. We can make it around the data you want. It's more because we're indifferent to that. We just need to know what you want, and then we kind of can build into the reports that you need. And that's what computers do really well. So it's really just about figuring out what data would really help drive you to first of all train better, but also how do we make it safer, and how do we highlight those that really are keen or who are just doing great? How do we identify someone who needs a little bit of extra help? So it's just all that kind of stuff that's really driving continuous improvement and training. My last slide before questions is just some of our major clients. And I hope that was valuable. I was trying to kind of make it less about our products and more about the philosophy, because even if you don't, you can be like a one vessel, and you don't have the complexity where you need an LMS and all of that, but you can use digital tools to really help you based on that philosophy. Like, not everybody learns at the same time. or at the same pace. But it is important to have that foundational knowledge before performing these skills.
Flesh that out a bit, like how does the skills like on board, how would that work? What does it feel like?
How do the skills and
So the skill assessor, so I have
so if you can imagine making a checklist for a fire drill, say like what do I want to see here? I want to see my team show up within a certain amount of time. I want to see they're properly dressed. I want to see they know how to lay out a hose, charge a hose, do a door entry, evacuate a space, whatever it is that you have for that particular drill. So you can sort of imagine how that's fleshed out.
Yeah.
But instead of saying things like, did the team show up on time? In here, that is a yes or no question already, but instead of subjective things like, was the team dressed properly? Well, you've got 8 people, is that yes or no? Were they all, right? So you can turn everything into yes, no questions. Some things can be team performance, some things can be individual performance.
Okay.
And so when you get a bit deeper with things like bridge resource management, where you're trying to see soft skills as well and real teamwork, instead of, is Dave a good communicator, it's things like, was a call out made at the appropriate time? Was it loud and clear? Was it closed loop? Right? You can really break things down, and instead of having these giant rubrics, like, with some of the Navy courses, they're trying to give somebody between a 1 and a 4, based on how well they did on a single competency. But if you look at the rubric, that competency is like 3 paragraphs long.
Yeah.
So it's really tough. How's he a 3 or a 2? And how did you come to that today when yesterday you said he was a 2? And very often the assessor knows. They can't really. It's like, well, it felt like a 2 yesterday. I don't know. So to be able to break all those things down and just see everything kind of laid out for you, it's really powerful.
So who inputs all the original data, like the competencies that they have currently and all of that? And like, how does it fit into obviously a lot of the companies have computerized systems,
So I'm trying to think of that, understand your question.
because you said they update the competencies, and so you know what competencies they have, and
So say you're an operator.
yeah.
So you might want to work with us, either for an LMS or a skill grader, and you would put your own, like you might do a sexual harassment course that you bought from a company, and you might put, and that's actually a popular one right now, that's a big deal, so that's why I mention it. And so you would put that as one of the pieces of content that you put in our LMS. And the operator themselves would decide what is important to train. You might have an HR department that has a bunch of, forms to say, I understand this and that.
And they just send those forms off to the HR department.
So the HR department would put those forms in, so this is a platform that's available or in Ladysmith, right? So they can access this at home, and they can do, and I was sort of for just general forms that they're going to sign. It's all time and date stamped, and the content is really up to the operator. So, like with the skill grader and what Dave was saying, we would work and kind of look at your form and your content of your form and try and help you get it into that yes or no thing. But with the LMS, you might have a, PPE check off, or does the person know where the fire extinguisher and all the, do they understand the new vessel or what have you? And that isn't like a video that you need to go buy. It's just a check off. And so you could place that in, but that information isn't coming from us.
Yeah, but so that checkoff, when it's completed, it'll go into the.
Oh, so it goes into the cloud.
It'll be sent back to
whoever wants.
The companies, wherever the company files it.
So this is interesting. Is that say it needs to go to port captain first, and then it needs to go to an HR department.
Yeah.
We can put that mechanism in the system,
Or where it's going and.
where it needs to get sent and who
Like
it
if
needs
you
to
get
get
the,
sent
if you
to.
get the resource certificate, it'll go to HR and HR will file it in appropriate.
So, in the case of third parties, so say the training is coming from outside of the company,
Yeah.
so then there's another mechanism, like obviously you're not doing that at home, you're going somewhere else, but there's ways to kind of, you might have to view it, like somebody in the organization, you check it off, maybe there's a number that you input or whatever, but then that goes to whoever it needs to go to, like the processes themselves, because we're indifferent to what the process is doing, but we can manage that automatically based on what you need for your particular operation, and automize it in many ways as much as we can, right?
Yeah.
So that you're not, holding files of paper on a vessel.
On that note, like, so if I was joining your vessel, my understanding is that I would already be in your system. I show up, you should know.
It is, and maybe you need to do a vessel orientation because you've never worked on that vessel, but you could do that right away. And you could do it on vessel if you did that in a Dutch harbor or someplace where you.
And to take that a step further, if you're mid-contract and they call you up and say, hey, congratulations, no vacation, you got a promotion, and you're gonna leave that vessel, go to another vessel in a new position, because HR initiated that and our matrix is connected to their matrix, the system goes, hey, Buddy's a third mate, or Buddy's a first mate now, and he's gonna be on this vessel. So when you show up and you log in, or if you log in on the plane or whatever, you're gonna see your in-position training has changed. Now all of a sudden you've got a new vessel familiarization, you've got new courses for your new position.
Okay.
So because of the matrix and the back end, the system kind of knows who you are and where you are, all that.
That's my studies. That's how we know then that, like, literally we're green, everybody's dialed in, ready to go.
Yeah,
And if we're yellow, well, whatever. I'm throwing colors here, but.
So how does a seaman get away from the mate for half an hour and say, oh, should I go to the office of HR and get my familiarization form? They're screwed.
Hopefully he doesn't need to do that anymore.
Yeah.
He's gotta start smoking so we can have a smoke
But
break.
that's like 20 years off.
Exactly. I can't charge overtime.
The most it takes away automatically, you're not doing that.
BC Ferries also, they actually have the training dialed down for route as well, like so vessel, route, position, and that they can basically, all these rules just tell without them having to be like, oh, let me check this spreadsheet, and just it's all automatic. And so it's all been figured out. I mean, obviously there's work in the front end of that. Somebody has to sit there and say, what do we need and how are we gonna do it and why are we gonna do it that way? And that's always fun too, but
It's a lot of work though. So we use it with the Canadian Coast Guard.
Yeah.
I was that person at the when Marine Learning Systems came on board with the Coast Guard. So populating that initially was it's a tremendous amount of work. But now it's established. It absolutely works fantastic. Soft skill learning. You get an email saying you require a harassment or another online course. You just click the link and it takes you right there. You complete it and it logs it into HR. You can't ask for a more elegant system. So.
Yeah, my question is, I'm from Western Maritime Institute, and my question is, how does this interact with regulated training, regulated courses like the Transport Canada courses that we deliver? We currently have a learning management system. We use Canvas, and I don't know if you're familiar with Canvas, but it's we link it to Zoom, and we do sessions with students, and then we do remote examinations. The learning management system is great for storing all that information, etc. But it seems to me that your particular learning management system, the way you've described it, is particularly suited to organizations that are doing internally mandated training rather than government mandated training, and who are also doing it remotely so that you can do it while you're at sea and you don't have connectivity at the time. But I just wonder, have you had experience working with institutions that are delivering mandated training, the Transport Canada type training?
Yeah, it's certainly Warsash and C-Smart are doing things like actus familiarization and bridge resource management, engine resource management, crowd management. It depends. Certainly there are some things you can't do at sea with that because they demand time in the seat in the classroom. But if it's approved to be done at sea, or if you're doing it in class, then there's no reason it can't go through the system. Yeah, it just depends on what their regulations. If it's something you have to do in school, then you have to do it in school. And so this is, I think Liz mentioned that it's not at all meant as a replacement for that specific kind of thing. There's no trying to replace the trainer. But yeah, the system is built from the first line of code up to live in that disconnected environment. Like, it was built, we didn't build it thinking, oh, this is going to be a great onshore product. There are all these things, Moodle and Canvas and these things that work fine on shore, but they won't connect at sea, obviously. So it's a bit of a niche that way.
But so, for instance, there would be kind of an option to use this to extend our training environment to people who are at sea, and then maybe to connect later to actually do the examinations, which are very strictly regulated by Transport Canada, our remote examinations.
Yeah, definitely. Exams, if an exam really needs somebody standing there watching, we do have a mechanism for that where things are locked and a certain person, an instructor would log on to say that I'm watching this person take the exam, kind of thing. But the hard part with what you just said, if you could have a system like this where they can do things at sea, yes and no. You would need to put a server on every vessel where one of your people may be serving, and that's going to be in the IT infrastructure of that shipping company. So you start getting into PII issues and all kinds of things. But if you have a system like that, there's certainly nothing stopping them from logging on with their laptop or their phone or their tablet and doing what they need to do when connected and taking certain things offline. But the onboard server piece disconnected, that really goes with a company infrastructure.
Well, let's put it this way: it's intriguing the potentials for this kind of a system, because the critical point in any remote training is, how do you deal with mariners who are at sea and don't have connectivity? And so you've got a piece of the puzzle there, and that's the part that's really intriguing to me.
I guess what I'm seeing here, Kevin, Duke Snyder, is from the school perspective, you got a great way of tracking what's going on, not necessarily providing the training through this, but tracking it and doing the assessment processes. Would plug in very, very well, so that you're still doing your training in bums and seats in the school, but you've got a process for allowing some
Onboard training
to occur. So it to me, this sounds like a really good combination of the onboard capability and what you're trying to do with bums and seats in Duncan.
Well, actually, Duke, we are already delivering online courses with a limited number of online courses with online examinations. So we're already doing that. It's what you would call the synchronous training, where we have bums in seats, but the seats are at home, and we're in a virtual classroom. But that's the point that we've gotten to so far, but we're definitely interested in pursuing the issue further.
Kevin, we're working with C-Smart and Wartzilla to do cloud simulation from home as well, which is in the early days, and don't worry, it'll never replace standing on a Class A bridge sim. But for certain things, if they want guys to just get a sense of what a certain arrival or departure might look like, or to do some kind of, a call rigs thing while they're off, there's a lot of stuff that we can cover remotely, for sure.
Magic Rock here, WMI as well. My question is how the account management is being done. Probably most of you remember when we went to school, the notes from the previous years and scripts and questions and the copies of the exams started flowing out. So if we are in an environment, being regulated, mandated by Transport Canada, how do we protect the ownership of the account? Let's say I want to deliver ship construction or stability course, which is very individual. It's not really interactive because you have to sink it in your brain, right? So is the participant will be able to print the content, which I think in a sense he should, because if someone is paying, let's say, $3,000 for the course, I think the person is entitled to some form of a notes or something like that. So how is that going to be protected so it will not start to circulate and the business will sort of a meltdown because it will be enough paperwork floating around meeting the criteria of the Transport Canada, and eventually participants 5 years down the road will start going to challenge the exam.
Well, you can't print anything off of our system. So
Well,
it's easier to do it in class than in the system. Having said that, there's the whole exam and test piece, right? There are companies that's all they do is exam proctoring, and they're doing eye scanning and all kinds of stuff, right? If you ask those guys what's the bottom line with the kind of security around exams and cheating, there's only so much that anybody can do short of being in the same room
Cheating
and
is
watching
the
that
one
person, right?
Yes,
So-
and there are places, tools in place.
Yeah.
But all I'm saying, you finish the course, sometimes you don't touch some part of the material for, let's say, 5 years, and all of a sudden you need to refresh your knowledge because you just change the type of the operation you've been taught about on this course, and you need to freshen up, and you have nothing to go on. You have to go and buy a book or.
For us, it's all up to the client, right? So certain, like if a client, we have a content partner in the UK called Intelligent Seas. They do really, really nice standard content, some bespoke content, things like that, oil and gas and shipping. A lot of their courses come with hard materials. So when you sign somebody up for that course, you're doing the online piece, but there's also something coming in the mail. So it just depends how it needs to be set up. I don't know how you protect against, I still have one of those books at home. I think I paid $40 for that. And just to help instructors, right? It's really, a lot of our reporting is actually instructor focused, where you can look at it and go, okay, how are our exams in BRM actually doing? Okay, 89% of people get question 2 right. We need to sharpen that one up, or 90% get question 3 wrong, right? So able to look at the system in that detail is,
Yeah, and performance over time as well. So when a new instructor comes, and this isn't, to put down an instructor, but if things are getting worse, then we can look at, okay, well, something's happened here. What happened? Is it that this instructor isn't tailoring the course to the questions in the exam, or didn't cover these points, or just to understand what's happening, because there's too much going on, too much potential data. It's hard to keep track of. It's hard to keep track of the questions that are not getting answered properly, but the system tries to sort of highlight that for you so that you can address it before it's actually an incident.
One of the things that we pride ourselves on that you can't do on any other system is, for instance, Carnival during COVID, they
you know, on the cruise ships, you don't really have a contract when you get off the ship, right? So you're 8 weeks off. You know you're going back, but there's nothing hard and fast. There's no guarantee. But they wanted to make sure all these people, they've got all these people all over the world, India, the Philippines, South America, wherever. They wanted to keep them informed and to keep them feeling like, you know, we're going to bring you back as soon as we can. So actually the CEO of Carnival Corp, Arnold Donald, he was doing weekly video addresses, and then they would just put that on the system. And because of the way the system works, within minutes, that's out, and you get an email. There's a new address from the boss. You choose if you want to watch it or not. But that was a cool use of the system. Had nothing to do with training, but just to be in touch. So safety bulletins. If you've had an incident, you want, holy cow, everybody needs to sign off on this right away. It can be out on the ships really quickly. Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to thank Elizabeth and Dave for coming. We have a certificate of appreciation.
Oh, well, thank you.
All right, thanks everybody for attending, and we'll see you next time.
Good night.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.